Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again to really unpack a career, look at the sources, and figure out how someone builds something lasting. Today, we're zeroing in on Brendon Walsh. You might know him in old BW and comedy circles. He's a stand-up, a podcaster.
And someone who made this really fascinating jump, didn't he? From, grinding it out on stage in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Not the typical LA or New York starting point.
Right. And somehow he parlayed that into co-hosting these podcasts that land guests. Guests that most major talk shows would kill for.
That's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what we want to trace. Our mission here isn't just a bio. We've got the sources, and we want to figure out the how.
Yeah, how does that happen? How do you build up the professional equity, the street cred, the connections, the actual idea that bridges alternative stand-up with, like you said, Christopher Nolan or Tom Brady showing up?
It's about that synergy, right, between the live stuff, the stand-up foundation, and then this really smart digital strategy you developed. Okay, so let's lay down the basics first just to ground us. Brendon Michael Walsh. Born in Philly, 1974, so he's, 51 now? Got those East Coast roots, but like we said, the career ignition point, according to everything we've seen, wasn't there. It was Austin, Texas. Started doing stand-up there in 2002.
And that starting point, Austin 2002, it's immediately significant. It signals a different kind of path right away.
How so? Different from starting in, say, New York.
Well, if you start in NYC or LA, you're right there under the industry microscope from day one. Agents, managers, casting folks, they're all around.
Which could be good, maybe faster recognition.
Could be, yeah. But it also puts this immense pressure on you to maybe conform, to fit a certain mold they're looking for. Austin's different.
It's a vibrant scene, sure, but it's not the center of the entertainment biz.
Exactly. It demands a different skill set. You've got to build a local following, be good enough to keep people coming back. But critically, you also have to tour. The industry gatekeepers aren't just down the block. You have to go find them or make them notice you from afar.
So more self-reliance, basically.
Yeah.
Build the act, hit the road.
Pretty much. Your main focus becomes the material itself and actually performing, getting paid to perform, rather than just endless showcases hoping an agent shows up.
It often means comedians coming out of scenes like Austin are more road-tested, they're maybe more resilient, and they develop a voice that's honed for actual audiences, not necessarily for a development exec.
Like building a sword in a real forge versus a lab, maybe?
That's a good way to put it, yeah. It's forged in the heat of performance.
No. Okay, so he builds this foundation in Austin. Then the next phase, roughly 2005 to 2008, seems to be about translating that live experience into, traditional media recognition.
Right, cashing in that road equity, so to speak.
And looking at his TV credits from that time, it's a real mix. You see the standard stand-up milestones people aim for back then.
Yeah, those appearances on shows like Premium Blend, Jimmy Kimmel Live, Conan, those are huge. And Last Comic Standing, too, the whole competition thing.
Why were those Pacific shows so important in the mid-2000s? They were basically non-negotiable if you were a touring comic. It wasn't really about becoming famous overnight. It was about getting that 5-minute clip on network TV.
Something a club owner could see.
Exactly. A club owner in, Des Moines could see that clip and go, okay, people know this guy, or at least recognize the show he was on. He can sell tickets. It was like getting your professional accreditation. You needed those logos on your resume.
Makes sense. But his credits list is wider than just those late-night spots. It seems like he was grabbing visibility anywhere he could, like sketches on the G4 network. That was pretty niche, wasn't it?
Very niche, focused on gaming, tech culture. And then he's also getting mentions on the Bob and Tom show.
Which was massive on radio, a totally different audience.
A huge reach, yeah. And then the sources even list an appearance on The Price is Right.
The Price is Right.
Okay.
That's adaptability.
Right. It shows someone who wasn't just thinking, I'm a stand-up. He was thinking, I'm an entertainer. He could shift gears for G4's visual gags, for Bob and Tom's audio audience, and even for the, organized chaos of a game show.
That range must have built a really practical skill set. Surviving before everything was streaming or on YouTube.
Absolutely. That kind of versatility was key back then.
Now let's talk about something the sources really highlight from this early period. The Doug Stanhope connection.
Yeah, crucial.
It says Walsh toured consistently as Stanhope's opener from 2005 to 2008. That's 3 full years. That sounds like more than just a job.
Oh, way more. Think about what that means. 3 years, night after night, performing for Doug Stanhope's audience.
Which is Not your average comedy club crowd, I gather.
Definitely not. Stanhope cultivated, and still does, this fiercely loyal, very smart, often pretty cynical fan base. They demand honesty, they demand an edge, they can smell bullshit a mile away.
So opening for that crowd must have been intense.
Incredibly intense. You had to be sharp. Your material had to be tight, bulletproof even.
Yeah.
You needed serious emotional resilience because that audience isn't there for gentle observational humor. You're operating way outside the usual safety net.
So if the normal comedy path is like business school, touring with Stanhope is like boot camp.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah, military boot camp for comics. It forces you to develop material that hits hard, that resonates with a very specific demanding counterculture vibe.
And that experience, that boot camp, gives him a unique kind of credibility.
Exactly. That's that professional equity we were talking about. It's a foundation built in the alternative scene, the underground. It meant his comedic voice wasn't polished in the LA club system. It was road-tested, unfiltered, raw. And that really defined his persona moving forward.
And it seems like all that hard work, that time in the Stanhope Forge, it paid off pretty quickly in terms of actual industry recognition.
Yeah, the timing works out, right after that heavy touring period.
In 2007, the sources say he won the $10,000 grand prize on the comedy stage at famecast.com. That's significant cash.
10 grand back then, especially from a comedy competition, that's major validation. It showed that his style, honed on the road with Stanhope, wasn't just appealing to that specific alt crowd. It could also win over judges in a more structured industry setting.
So it proved he could operate in both worlds.
Right. He had the alternative cred, and he could succeed by the industry's own metrics. Proof that he was a top emerging talent, recognized from different angles.
Which leads right into the next year, 2008. AskMen.com named him one of their top 9 emerging comedians.
And those kinds of lists, those ones to watch things, they were really important. They solidified the perception that you were someone going places.
So the contest win, the list placement, these were like the official stamps of approval.
Pretty much. They validated all the years of touring and those scattered TV appearances. And critically, that kind of recognition is what opens the doors to the next logical step, getting booked at major comedy festivals.
Okay, so he's got the Stanhope Road cred, he's got the industry nods, and then we see him hitting the festival circuit hard.
Yeah, and this is where you really see the breadth of his appeal crystallize. He wasn't just sticking to one type of festival.
Right. The sources list some big prestigious ones, like the Vancouver Comedy Festival and Just for Laughs in Montreal.
And those are the big leagues, especially Montreal's Just for Laughs, or JFL as everyone calls it. That's basically the industry's main trade show for comedy. Meaning you go there to be seen by everyone, agents, managers, network execs, producers from all over the world. You typically do a short, super polished set, 5, maybe 10 minutes tops, designed to impress the suits, basically.
Okay, so he could play that game. But the list also includes very different kinds of festivals.
Exactly. Juxtaposed against JFL, you see him at South by Southwest and FunFest Best, both in Austin. Makes sense, tapping into his home base.
But also these more curated, maybe comedian-focused events, like Bridgetown in Portland, the Aspen Comedy Festival, and the first Benson Ball in D.C.
Yeah, and let's pause on that contrast, because it's important. Mastering Montreal proves you can operate at the highest commercial level. You can deliver that tight, network-ready set.
But mastering Bridgetown or Benson Ball,
that signals something else. Those festivals, particularly in their early days, were often run by comedians for comedians. They valued experimentation, artistic risk-taking, community. Getting booked there meant you had respect from your peers in the alt comedy world.
So he could do both. The slick industry showcase and the more experimental artist-driven fest.
Apparently so, and that's pretty rare. It shows he wasn't just chasing industry approval, he was still deeply connected to the creative, ground-level comedy community. He could navigate both worlds.
That ability to operate on both tracks seems like a good setup for moving into the digital space, which was just starting to bubble up then. Around 2010, we see this interesting event, a night of 140 tweets. March 12, 2010, at UCB Theater in LA. It was a benefit for Haiti.
That event title alone is like a little time capsule, isn't it? 140 tweets.
Right, back when Twitter had that strict character limit.
This is fascinating because it shows comedians actively thinking about how these new platforms could shape their content, not just promote their gigs. It wasn't just reading funny tweets aloud.
It was structuring material around that short-form constraint.
Seems like it. It's an early sign of comedians adapting to digital formats, exploring how social media rhythms could influence live performance. Kind of foreshadows the short, punchy style that dominates so much online content now.
And following that thread, 2011 looks like an absolutely pivotal year for him in terms of audio and digital presence.
Huge year. Because he landed spots on 2 podcasts that were basically building the foundation for the entire comedy podcast universe.
Episode 210 of WTF with Mark Maron and podcast #140 of the Joe Rogan Experience.
These weren't just random guest appearances. For anyone listening who wants to understand the strategy, getting on both of those shows in 2011 was massive.
Why those two specifically?
Well, Maron's WTF was, and still is, the gold standard for deep, introspective, long-form interviews within the comedy community. Being on WTF meant Maron, and by extension the core comedy world, saw you as someone with a real story, with depth. It conferred serious, pure credibility.
Okay, so that's the insider respected comedian angle. What about Rogan?
Rogan, even back then, represented something different. Immense reach, a much broader audience, often younger, more digitally focused. The vibe was high energy, free-flowing conversation.
More outward facing, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Getting on Rogan signaled that you could connect with that huge, growing online audience, the people discovering comedy through the internet, not just clubs or TV.
So hitting both WTF and JRE in the same year.
Proved he could do both. He could handle the intimate narrative deep dive with Maron and the energetic, wide-ranging hang with Rogan. It basically cemented his credibility in the digital audio space. It showed his voice work there, which is crucial groundwork for launching his own stuff.
Right, so once he'd proven his voice worked in that digital audio space via Maron and Rogan, the next logical step seems to have been moving into co-hosting his own projects, getting deeper into the podcast world.
Makes sense. And the sources point to a couple of key collaborations around this time. He co-hosted The Bone Zone with Randy Letke.
Which had a pretty dedicated following, as I recall.
Yeah, it did. Built up that experience of working with a partner, that back-and-forth chemistry. And then there was the Do You Know Who Jason Segel Is podcast he did with Nick Thune.
Okay, and notably, both of those shows were connected to the All Things Comedy Network.
That's a really important detail. Being part of ATC, which was founded by comedians like Al Madrigal and Bill Burr, that's a strategic advantage.
How so? What does network affiliation give you?
Well, think of it like infrastructure. Instead of just throwing your podcast out into the void, you're launching it from a platform that already has an audience, production support, maybe cross-promotional opportunities. It gives you stability and discoverability, especially as the podcast market was starting to get crowded.
So these early co-hosting gigs were about building skills and leveraging network infrastructure.
Exactly. Honing those conversational chops, the improv skills you need for good audio, which are different from crafting a solo stand-up set. And doing it within a supportive structure.
But then comes what feels like the real game changer, the project that defines his current podcasting identity, the World Record Podcast.
Yes. This is where it all seems to come together. The road-tested sensibility, the digital savvy, and just a brilliant core concept.
Let's break down that concept because it sounds simple, but it's kind of genius. Each week, he and a guest analyze a different world record.
Right. And the beauty is in the structure that provides. It's specific, it's objective mostly, it's often inherently absurd or strange.
It's not another comedian interviews comedian show.
Not at all. It avoids the typical podcast traps,
Yeah.
mining personal trauma, getting bogged down in politics, rehashing the same career anecdotes. The world record acts as this fantastic anchor.
A container, almost. It gives them a defined topic analyzing this specific record.
Right.
But within that container, they can go anywhere.
Precisely. You can get into the details of the records, you can riff, you can tell related stories, you can get completely silly, but you always have this concrete thing to come back to.
And you argue that this specific, maybe slightly quirky structure is actually the key to its success.
I think it's the absolute key, especially when you look at the guests this show has reportedly attracted. The sheer level and diversity of the names, it's kind of mind-blowing, and it speaks directly to the power of the format. This is the real aha moment for anyone studying content strategy.
Okay, let's dig into that guest list because, yeah, the names mentioned in the sources are astonishing. You've got naturally comedy and acting peers who get the vibe.
Yeah.
Melissa Villaseñor, Josh Gad.
Sure, people comfortable with improv, character work. Michael Keaton's name is on there, Corey Feldman.
Right. But then it leads way beyond the expected comedy sphere. This is where it gets wild. A-list directors and creators. Lin-Manuel Miranda. Christopher Nolan.
Stop and think about that for a second. Christopher Nolan discussing a world record. These are individuals who are incredibly selective about their media appearances. They're usually promoting a massive film. They control their narrative fiercely.
So why go on this podcast?
Because the format offers something unique. It's low stakes, it's fun, it's guaranteed not to be the same questions they get asked everywhere else. It's not a press junket obligation. It's a chance to engage a different part of their brain, maybe.
Like a palate cleanser for them, a chance to just be funny or analytical about something totally random, like the world's largest rubber band ball or whatever.
Exactly. It taps into that intellectual curiosity or playfulness that maybe doesn't get an outlet in their high-pressure day jobs.
Yeah.
The unique premise itself becomes the draw, attracting people tired of the usual interview grind.
And the list goes even further, right? Into sports,
Yeah.
massive public figures.
Yeah, the sources mention Tom Brady, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Taylor Swift.
Okay, now that demonstrates the universal pull of the concept. Brady, The Rock, Swift. These are global brands.
And getting them to talk about, the fastest time to stack donuts or something. It proves the niche subject matter is paradoxically the most accessible way in. You don't need to know their stats or their latest album. You just need to be willing to engage with the absurdity of the record.
It levels the playing field.
And we should also address the full range of guests mentioned, including those who might be seen as controversial. The sources list Jared Fogle as having been a guest.
Right.
Reporting on that requires impartiality. It's a data point. And analyzing it, you perhaps have to connect it back to Walsh's roots, that Stanhope-era, alternative, anti-establishment ethos.
Meaning a willingness to engage outside the mainstream comfort zone.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Operating on that fringe sometimes involves platforming figures that wouldn't pass muster on a network show. It's a choice, likely rooted in that specific brand of comedy that defines itself by pushing boundaries and not adhering to conventional gatekeeping. It's part of that unfiltered identity.
To see the format really working, though, the Ted Danson example is pretty illustrative.
Yeah, that's a great specific case.
The sources mention an episode where the discussion wasn't just about a record, but about Danson's own real-life attempt to break a bowling world record.
That's the concept firing on all cylinders, isn't it? It moves beyond just commentary into actual personal ambition, even if it's a quirky ambition.
It shows the format can unlock these unexpected human stories, even from massive celebrities, things you'd never get in a standard interview.
Totally. It makes the whole thing feel less like just a bit and more like a genuine, if slightly absurd, exploration. The structure, again, paradoxically leads to more unique and revealing content.
So he establishes the World Record Podcast, this unique conceptual powerhouse. But Walsh doesn't seem to just rest there. He keeps evolving, which seems critical for staying relevant long term.
Absolutely. That adaptability is key, especially how fast digital media changes. And we see that clearly with his latest project mentioned in the sources.
The Get to the Points podcast, launched in 2024.
Right. And this isn't just him starting another show. The details suggest a very deliberate strategic move.
Okay, first off, the team. He's reunited with Doug Stanhope.
Yeah, bring it full circle back to that foundational partnership from the mid-2000s, and they've teamed up with Sean Green.
That Stanhope reunion alone is significant. Decades of shared history there.
Huge advantage. That built-in chemistry, that shared comedic language forged on the road, that you can't fake that. It gives the new show instant rapport, something brand new podcasts often struggle for months to find. They're leveraging years of professional trust.
But the really interesting part, strategically, might be the platform. It's hosted on Sean Green's sports gambling podcast network.
Exactly. That's a major pivot. Moving away from the pure, quirky comedy concept of World Record into something much more specific and, frankly, commercially potent right now.
The sports gambling niche.
Which, in 2024, isn't just a niche. It's one of the absolute hottest, fastest growing, and most effectively monetized sectors in all of digital audio and content creation.
So this move shows more than just creative range.
Oh, yeah. It shows serious business savvy. He's identifying where the audience engagement is intense, where the advertising money is flowing, and he's moving into that space. He's taking the credibility he built in comedy, especially that alternative cred via Stanhope,
and applying it to this booming adjacent market.
Precisely. It's using established reputation to launch into a high-growth area. It's not just another general comedy chat. It's targeted, specialized content for a very specific, valuable audience.
Okay, let's try and synthesize this whole journey for you, the listener. We're tracing this arc, right? Starts in Philly, but the career really ignites in Austin around 2002. Then that crucial, intense touring period with Stanhope, 2005 to 08. building road chops.
Right, the forge.
Then converting that into traditional media, cred the TV spots, the contest win, the emerging comedian list, getting validation,
Yep.
then hitting the festival circuit, proving he can work both the big industry events and the indie scene.
Navigating both worlds.
Then the pivotal digital moment in 2011, getting the stamp of approval from both Marin and Rogan. Huge digital currency.
Cementing that online voice.
Which leads to developing his own unique podcast concept, the World Record Podcast, using that brilliant structure to attract an absolutely stellar, unbelievable guest list, creating unique IP.
The conceptual masterstroke.
And finally, the 2024 move. Reuniting with Stanhope, but strategically launching into the booming sports gambling market via a specialized network.
Adapting and monetizing.
It really is a multi-decade case study in strategy, isn't it?
Right.
It wasn't just about being funny.
Not at all. Talent is necessary, but not sufficient. It required recognizing shifts in media, knowing when to leverage connections like Stanhope or the ATC network, but crucially, also knowing when and how to invent something totally new, like the world record concept.
That constant reinvention.
Yeah, and pairing deep connections with unique ideas seems to be the recurring pattern. That's how you build something that lasts. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so we've taken this deep dive, looked at the blueprint of Brendon Walsh's career. What's the big takeaway here for someone listening, maybe trying to build their own thing in a creative field?
I think the core lesson really boils down to the power of a well-defined niche or maybe a unique constraint. We saw those three phases, right? The road dog building the voice, the festival period getting validation, and then the podcasting era. What made that last phase so powerful, especially with World Record, was the concept itself. Choosing that specific constrained topic, world records, created this unique space. It was so different that it became irresistible, even to A-listers who normally wouldn't do a smaller podcast. The structure enabled the success.
So the takeaway for you listening is that talent and timing matter, obviously, but maybe the real differentiator is creating that unique conceptual framework. It's not just about being good. It's about building a specific sandbox that makes your talent shine and makes it easy and appealing for others, even huge names, to jump in and play.
Well put. It elevates your own work and lowers the barrier to entry for collaborators or guests.
Which leaves us with a final thought, something for you to chew on.
Okay.
Considering that incredible, almost unbelievable guest list for the World Record Podcast, Nolan, Brady, Swift, Keaton, does the sheer novelty and the structural safety of analyzing something specific and often absurd, like world records, does that actually make it a better magnet for top-tier talent than the standard open-ended interview podcast?
Are people at that level more drawn to a unique, structured novelty than they are to another conversation about themselves and their careers? Does the weird constraint beat the ego stroke?
Something to think about. Does novelty trump notoriety in attracting the truly hard-to-get guests?
A question to ponder.
Mull that over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.